The Carolina Panthers saw a breakout from Bryce Young last year, but it's now or never in year 3 for Bryce Young.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the NFC South because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are still the favorites. The Saints maybe interdivision trade for Kirk Cousins. But we got to start with Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. Before we dive in, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, Lauren, what I've enjoyed doing here with the divisions, we've hit 2 divisions in the NFC already with the NFC East and the NFC North. Now I want to dive into the NFC South. And one of the big questions that I have with these division kind of recaps of the offseason is who is on the hot seat? Now, typically people think of a coach or, maybe they would go to a player, an executive, something like that, a GM. But for me, we talk about a hot seat in the NFC South. And it's Bryce Young at quarterback for the Carolina Panthers because we saw the rookie season be what it was. We saw the beginning of the season be what it was. But after that, he really turned it on. And my guy Julian Council from Locked On Panthers talked about the back half of the season.
Looking from week 9 to 18, he had the 5th best passing grade. And then he was the 6th overall quarterback. So the second half of the season, he was a top 10, top 6 quarterback in the NFL. And I'm not going to come out here and think that right off the bat, Bryce is going to do that again this upcoming season, because I don't think Bryce Young is better than Josh Allen or Pat Mahomes or Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I mean, those are 4 guys right there already going to be in the top 4. I would imagine that Matthew Stafford's probably up there. We'll see how things work out with Jared Goff now that Ben Johnson is in Chicago, but he would have a great opportunity. If Bryce Young can be a top 12 quarterback like he was from when he came back in as a starter to the close of last season, I'm thinking you feel good about that next season. No? Like, would you not? I would think you would want to feel good and have to feel good about that if that's how things play out. Obviously, you'd love for him to be a surefire top 10 guy, be right there behind the Burrows, the Mahomes, the Allens, the Lamar Jacksons of the NFL. If he can be number 5, and those guys are all in the AFC. How does he stack up to all the quarterbacks in the NFC? If he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFC, like, you're in a good position moving forward here in Carolina very clearly.
If Bryce Young is a top 5 quarterback in the NFC or a top 10 or 12 quarterback in the NFL, that's a massive success for the Panthers.
Yeah, it feels like a big leap from where we are. Like,
it does. As
well as he played down the stretch last season, I have a particular expertise on teams with bad quarterbacks that have a really good 8-game stretch. I remember when Mitch Trubisky was an NFC Player of the Month and had a really good stretch. Justin Fields has had really good stretches. Like, not to say that Bryce Young can't take that leap forward and won't continue to get better, but one good end of a season where things were kind of going well in an otherwise lost season, to me, I'm not sold that he's going to come in this year and just make that huge leap and take another big step forward. Like, he still only had like 2,500 yards last season. Like, we can slow down a little bit here.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit. I'm with you there, but I guess from this perspective, that's the optimistic outcome, is that he becomes that. So I acknowledge that as an outcome, but for me, it is now or never for Bryce Young. I think this season, his 3rd year in the NFL, he played better at the back half of last season. He's obviously got better coaching. They go out, they get Teteroa McMillan to go with him. They just got him Xavier Legette the year before that. Now we can debate how good Legette is going to be. You still have Adam Thielen. Like, they add help up front, and it really helped last year with the guards and everything. I see a running back room that could get better. Of course, they're dealing with some injuries there right now, but it's not awful. And they add Rico Dowdle, who I'm a fan of, left Dallas to go there. So I think they have stuff around Bryce Young. I think what Bryce Young is going to be in the NFL will be known by the end of this year. I think whether he is a surefire, hey, this guy's good enough to be a starter, we're going to keep building around him, or, hey, we're going into Bryce Young's last year of his rookie contract, fifth-year option, whatever, what they want to do with that. The fourth year of Bryce Young's rookie contract, if he's not the guy, we know it. We're going to be looking for other options, especially in a draft class that is pretty good. So I think the hot seat player, I know this is a weird way to do it, but the hot seat is Bryce Young, because if he doesn't continue to prove that he's the guy who he was the end of last season, then the Panthers are probably going to be looking to move on by next offseason.
Yeah, I feel bad because we get into this two sides of the same coin, where on the one hand, we never have enough patience for these quarterbacks and we expect them to be great right away. But at the same time, in the modern NFL, we don't see a ton of examples anymore of like quarterbacks who took a while. I mean, okay, like Sam Darnold later in his career, and Geno Smith, yeah, but like the Josh Allen, like they're bad their first couple years, and then year three with the same team, they turn it on. Like, we're just not really seeing that happen anywhere. Most of the quarterbacks that are actually really good, we know pretty quickly. You can have a bad rookie year, but like by year two, we kind of either know, and okay, he had a good second half of the season, so maybe, but like I think we'll know pretty quickly in year three if he's either taking that leap or he's going to be just that lower level of quarterback.
And I even think, like, I would maybe say like a Baker Mayfield kind of player, like got better during their rookie contract. But Baker Mayfield still early on, what was it, year two? He led the Browns to the playoffs. So it's like he had proven more even earlier, even with the renaissance that came in Tampa Bay or whatever. So I'm with you there that they're just, we can preach patience all we want, but when does patience ever actually work out? And even if it does, look at Geno Smith, look at Sam Darnold. Are you winning a championship with those players? Probably not. So it's like, yeah, you got better and you turned into a competent starter, but you're still not good enough to lead a team to a championship. So is that really turning it around like in the way that we're talking about with Bryce Young? Not really.
And I think the thing that's easy to overlook here is like, we're talking about a number one overall pick, right? This is not supposed to be we need to give him a lot of time to develop. It's one thing you take a guy in the second or third round, and yeah, if he has to play early in his career, maybe he's going to need more time and can develop into a little bit more. But like, you staked your whole franchise, you traded a bunch of stuff to the Bears. Like, this was your whole enchilada. This was supposed to save your franchise. And it's like, you're 2 years in and you're not sure. Like, that's a really big red flag. It's not the never say never, but like even though he had a good end of the last season, like that's still 8 games out of 32 that's all you got to sit on for a number one overall pick. Like, that's not a good sign.
No, it's not. It's funny, Lauren, because we're on this roller coaster, but we're a couple of seats back. Like we're looking up there like, oh man, that doesn't look good, but like you're going into year 2 of Williams. My team just drafted quarterback number 1 overall. So it's like very interesting to see what the takes are around our own quarterbacks and whether we, operate without bias and don't just protect our guys, Lauren. So keep us accountable, Locked On NFL folks. But I do want to say one thing about the Panthers. I think overall as a team, even outside of Bryce Young, that they're better. And I think they're going to be more competitive this year. If we're talking about a team that's going to change their victory total the most, either good or bad, out of the NFC South, I'm going to go with the Panthers going from 5 wins to like 8 wins. But outside of that, I don't see any other team, because the Bucs had, 11 or 10 wins. I think it'll be about the same. The Falcons had 7 or 8 wins. It'd be about the same. And the Saints had about 5 wins. Maybe they dropped down to 2 or something. You know what I mean? But the Panthers are the team that I look at who had 5 wins last year. And I would say if any team in the division, their record changes dramatically, good or bad, I think the Panthers are the team that actually move their total the most. I think they win 8 games.
Yeah, I think they certainly have the most room to work and the easiest path.
Right.
I mean, I could see Atlanta imploding, just because I don't know that they got a lot better players, like something like that, where coaching staff gets fired, like that kind of bad, everything goes wrong. But yeah, I don't see the Saints making a big jump or the Bucs making a big drop either.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's just the NFC South is kind of what it is, and I don't feel a lot differently about those teams than I did last year, quite honestly, other than I think the Panthers will be more competitive. But a lot more to talk about within this division. which player is going to make a leap this year, what was the best acquisition in the division all year, and ultimately, who's going to win it. A lot to discuss. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing every night. Delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Me personally, watching the playoffs, I've been rooting for the Knicks and the Wolves, and they're in tough spots. But you know what? I'm still going to hit the over on the points for Anthony Edwards. He's going to continue to come to play. Either way, no matter how you feel, if you're new to FanDuel, right now is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We are talking about the NFC South, what we think is going to happen. I had on the hot seat this year as Bryce Young. I feel like his career is in the balance. I feel like Lauren kind of agreed with me there. And then we talked about teams that could change their win totals in one way or another. I think the Panthers also are the team that has the biggest change, but in the NFC South, it's kind of hard to pinpoint any team that's going to have a massive difference. But now I want to get into the biggest remaining question in the division, and I think that is clearly the New Orleans Saints quarterback situation. But in a close second, I went with Kirk Cousins' uncertainty in Atlanta, and I just want to tie the dots together. It's an interdivisional trade, so that probably means that it's unlikely. But let me ask you this. If Kirk Cousins was a free agent on the market right now, do you think that the Saints would pick him up?
I think you'd have to consider it, right? I mean,
right.
You don't have to sign him to a 4-year guaranteed contract, but like a 1-year deal to bring a guy in just to have somebody with some more experience that can win and can show these young quarterbacks. I mean, they've got 3 quarterbacks there, I think, plus an undrafted free agent, but like Jake Haener is the most experienced guy. They just haven't had a lot of like of that under their belt in the room to show them what was going on. Like this was a problem for the Bears last year, and with Caleb Williams and Tyson Bagent as their backup, they didn't have a veteran in the room. And there's times when you just need somebody with that experience, and the coaching staff can do some of it, but they need that actual like person that can kind of pull them aside when coaches can't be there all the time and can't be in all the meetings and all the conversations. Like there's limits to what coaches can do with quarterbacks. So get a veteran in the room, even if you still make it a competition or whatever, and let Spencer Rattler and company compete for it. Like I think feels like they need to do something there, but I'm left feeling like, is it a big question mark, or are we just rolling forward with that at this point? Like I think the Saints are just doing it, and I think that's settled business. I mean, it seems dumb, but I don't know that it's a question mark at this point.
You know what? That's fair, Lauren. And I could just be projecting my own lack of confidence of the New Orleans Saints onto the situation. Like, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe it is settled. It's not a remaining question. We have our answer. But what you just pointed out there is so smart, Lauren, and I hadn't thought about it before. You know, all I could do is compare it to the team I cover every day, and the Titans are going to go out and draft Cam Ward. What do? They go out and get Brandon Allen, a 33-year-old with less career passing yards than Will Levis. You know what I mean? Like, this guy is not coming in here to play. He is literally coming in here because he was Joe Burrow's backup when Brian Callahan was in Cincy, and now they want him to be Cam Ward's mentor and teacher. And you mentioned your situation in Chicago and how Caleb Williams didn't really have anybody to lean on. And it's not just, having an older – it's who's teaching these guys how to watch film? Who's teaching these guys what they do with their body? Like, hey, on Mondays you need to do this, and on Tuesdays who is leading? And my big problem is too, when you have only young guys, a guy like Tyson Bagent, he still is thinking in his head and having his dad hype him up, I'm a starter in the NFL. I'm going to prove myself. I don't care about this number 1 overall pick and his success and how well he does. I got to get mine. I'm going to take his spot from him. Not only am I not here to help him, I am here to take his job. That is what my motivations are as a person. Well, Jake Haener who's banged up now, too, so they don't even have him to actually play. Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough now, all three of them have the same exact motivation, and that's to beat the other guy, take his money, take his spot. They are all so directly competing against each other that it can create a negative environment. And Ross, the mastermind Jackson, on a clip that I used last week of his show, he mentioned how the Saints aren't interested in Aaron Rodgers because Kellen Moore may not have the strongest personality as a coach. Well, number one, that's a red flag that you would even say something like that. But two, I believe Ross. And now you have a bunch of quarterbacks who want to cut each other's throats, all fighting for the same spot, all young guys trying to get theirs and prove themselves. And then a young head coach who maybe doesn't have a strong personality to manage that. Like, that sounds like a disaster, and a veteran in there who isn't hyper-focused on, what their career is going to be because their career is what it is, that would be what's best. So maybe the quarterback, who they're going to be, isn't the remaining question, but how, detrimental that is going to end up being to the Saints may be the big remaining question.
Yeah, that's where I come back to the Kirk Cousins thing being the most, unsolved, because something's got to give there. It's
right.
Weird. It's weird to even have him back in the building for OTAs and stuff. Not that it's that he and Michael Penix wouldn't be friends or anything, but it's just sort of hey, everyone kind of knows Kirk Cousins would want to be starting somewhere else and that he's not going to get to start in Atlanta. So good for him for not making it a big mess, but that feels weird. And that feels like one of these sort of lingering unanswered question situations that we still define. I think Atlanta has a few of those different spots of what's going to happen with Kyle Pitts. And they have a lot they need to figure out with some of the young players. They're a real volatile team right now in my eyes.
See, Kyle Pitts would have been a good hot seat player too. I don't think that he comes back to Atlanta. I think they let him leave in free agency and they move on. But either way, that is a good mention. But we talk about Cousins, and I know that the conversation could be, well, you just talked about how not having a veteran quarterback was so bad, could be so bad in New Orleans. Why would you want to get rid of that vet in Atlanta? Well, Kirk Cousins is the worst of both worlds. You get an older quarterback who you can't develop, who is who he is, but that doesn't really seem like he wants to mentor the young guy. I mean, he wasn't outright rude to Michael Penix, but it's clear that he is not happy in this situation, and that kind of leads me into my next superlative. I don't really care if I'm Atlanta about Kirk Cousins at all, because at the end of the day, I think Michael Penix Jr. is going to be a decent player. I think he's going to be a starting level player. And my guy Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons pointed out a specific reason why I think Michael Penix makes a leap this year from backup, take some time, development to, this is maybe the second best quarterback in the NFC South.
So if we are assuming Michael Penix throws the same number, the difference between a full season of Kirk Cousins in terms of pushing the ball down the field would amount to about 53 deep passes over the course of a season. And Penix at that same rate that he had last year would be about 87. So plus 34. So about 2 more deep shots that Penix is going to take per game. And if you're hitting roughly half of those, as Kirk and Penix roughly did, that's about 1 more explosive play per game with Michael Penix's deep passing. And for those of you that don't know, I've been tracking the number of drives since 2010 that the Falcons offense has had a 20-plus yard play on. So roughly that translates to every big play equals about 4 points of scoring based off of that. And so you extrapolate that over the course of a season of Penix, that basically means that Michael Penix, an offense ran by Michael Penix, theoretically would score about 72 more points in a season. And you add that to the Falcons' point total of 389 last year, that would equal 461 points this upcoming season, which would have ranked 8th in the NFL, just by the deep passing of Michael Penix.
Now, I don't know if you could say he's going to do this, that means this points, they'll be this good. But I do think that there's so much talent on offense for Atlanta that a little bit better quarterback play than what Kirk Cousins was able to give them last year coming off the ACL or coming off the Achilles will make a massive difference. I think Michael Penix is just a Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield. I know Jared Goff sounds crazy because he's played so good lately, but we'll see this year. I just think Michael Penix is kind of a tier 3 starting quarterback in the NFL, and that's better than Bryce Young. So I think Michael Penix makes a leap of This time next year, we'll be talking about, can Michael Penix take the next step up? I don't think he does. I think he gets to where he is, and he's just that guy. But I think he does take a significant leap forward this year.
A couple guys I think could take a leap forward are two guys coming off of injuries that I think I'm really excited to see come back. Chris Olave, the receiver for the Saints. I know quarterback situation there can be limiting, but I think even in that offenses, you can find yards for a number one receiver as talented as him. And then Derek Brown with the Carolina Panthers. With everything Panthers did to upgrade that defensive line, they put a bunch of money in free agency. He was already playing really well, but now you actually give him some help on that line, and I think he can really eat and produce a lot more on the stat sheet than we've seen up to this point in his career.
No, I think those are great options. And honestly, another one that I had in mind was Bucky Irving from Tampa Bay. I know that he had a really good season last year, but I think he could make that leap to, hey, is this a top 5 running back in the NFL? Is it like household name like Bucky? Everybody knows Bucky. You know what I mean? Like, I think he could make that kind of jump. But speaking of Tampa Bay, we have been talking NFC South for 20 minutes. We have not mentioned the best team in the division. All right, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked Bryce Young on the hot seat. It's now or never. We talked about the uncertainty with Kirk Cousins' situation and what that could mean for the rest of the division. But now we got to get into the best team in the division, the team that won the division last year. Haven't talked about them very much so far, and it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Before we do, though, do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Lauren, when it comes to the best acquisition in the division, I am going to stay with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where we left with Bucky Irving, and go to their draft pick in the first round of Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. I think pairing him with Mike Evans right now, Evans is an older player anyways. Who knows how long he's going to be at max production. Chris Godwin, very good player, but coming off a serious injury last year, could be back and ready to go. But he's also an older player too. It's not like Chris Godwin is, a guy you're building with for the long term. Jalen McMillan at wide receiver really started to turn it on at the end of last year, and people are very excited about him. But I think Emeka Egbuka has a chance to be better than Matthew Golden, to be better than Tetaroa McMillan even. So I really like that fit with Baker Mayfield as a reliable guy. I think out of all the acquisitions that we saw in the division, I think Emeka Egbuka in round 1 could end up being the very best one of them all.
Yeah, it was an offseason in that division of like not a lot of big headliney splash moves. Like,
I wrote down all draft picks, dude. I didn't take any of the free. I mean, Trevon Moehrig, I guess, from Carolina was a decent signing, but I wrote down all draft picks when I talked about acquisitions.
Yeah, it's like the big money was like what, Tershawn Wharton to the defensive line there.
Yeah,
the Panthers, like
Carolina. Yep.
It's not of like, wow, here's the big splash edition. I agree with you on draft picks. I was going to kind of cheat and combine Jalen Walker and James Pierce.
There you go. Go with it.
Fan of both of those prospects, as at least the film, at least. And I think Raheem Morris can get creative defensively with how you move Jalen Walker around. And I know that because they're rookies, like they're not going to come in and both be big 10 sack guys right away in year one. But I think in the long term, those are going to be really fun pieces for them. And I think Atlanta has been pretty desperate to get a revitalized pass rush there. So I kind of like the double dipping at that spot, even though I think Falcons fans wanted them to go in some other directions and get some other needs filled. Like, get good pass rushers and figure it out later, especially Georgia pass rushers in that case. It should work out well for them.
Well, giving away the first round pick from next year is what soured Falcons fans to the idea. But when we remove how they were acquired, when we remove what was paid, and you just look at, hey, they had a big need at pass rush. You had Jalen Walker, a versatile linebacker and edge rusher. You had James Pierce. So you would say they're rookies. James Pierce has the talent, in my opinion, to have a Javon Curse season. Like the freak defensive player of the year, 1999. I think it was 17, 18, 19 sacks as a rookie. James Pierce has the talent to do something like that. Now, is it likely? Absolutely not. But I totally understand what you mean when you look at best acquisition and just look at both of those together. That makes a ton of sense. I will say this, though. We talked about Emeka Egbuka. We talked about Bucky Irving. Haven't talked a lot about the Bucs, but talking all these teams, looking at the division as a whole, I still believe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win the division again. And I know that the big question for the Bucs is you lose Liam Cohen, who goes to Jacksonville. That was an unceremonious ending. There was a lot of, reports and this person's mad, that person's mad. But I think the Bucs have enough in place and enough continuity now that they're still going to be the best team. And on Locked On Bucs, our guys talked about it recently.
Hey, we're running the same system, right? There are going to be little tweaks here or there, but now we can get into the nuances. Now we can talk about how to block this. How do we run this route? And more importantly, talking about conditioning, getting these guys into shape. Because we saw a lot of those wide receivers go down. Now, Chris was that was an unfortunate injury that had nothing to do with stamina. But, Sterling Shepard had his issues. Mike Evans had his issues. I mean, the wide receivers were going down left and right last season. There's a little bit of, hey, we do a lot of motion, so we got to make sure we're in good shape. But otherwise, great things to say about Egbuka. They already knew kind of what they were getting. They have familiarity with what Ohio State staff did with him, and the fact they can move him around, and he is so consistent. Certainly great to hear there.
Yeah, see, I just think Egbuka is such a reliable player. Ohio State's like a farm system for, professional football teams for the NFL, like some other colleges, around the country are. But I just think if they had issues with their wide receiver group staying healthy, adding somebody so consistent is just going to let them keep humming on offense, and they got some good talent on defense. I like the roster in Tampa Bay. I just think they're clearly the best team, and they'll win the division again.
Yeah, I think it's theirs to lose, right? I mean, no one else is come in and say yes. And Atlanta can't be clearly better right now. Carolina can't be clearly better right now. Maybe by the end of the season, you could see it playing out that way, but it's Tampa's to go down. And I think even with the Cohen thing, I think the same is true in Detroit with losing their coordinators, where I don't think it's going to be like this immediate. All of a sudden, if Cohen was really some of the secret there for getting Baker to still play well, it's not like, oh, he's going to be immediately a pumpkin. Same with Jared Goff. He's not going to immediately become bad quarterbacks again. I think if that is a problem, it's a slow sort of slip, right? It's like you keep the train going, but you slowly falling off the tracks more and more and more. And eventually, a year or two from now, you look at it and go, oh, wow, things really went downhill once he left. But it's not the immediate drop off. It's sort of like all of a sudden the quality goes down a little bit. It's like when a restaurant gets bought out, goes corporate, right? And the menu hasn't changed, but the food quality slowly gets worse and worse until it's like, oh man, we kind of wish they still had the old owners. It doesn't immediately drop off, but you just sort of notice more and more. It's not what it used to be.
Yeah, and I think that is a multi-year look at it, and even just a one-season look at it. To me, it's the adjustments. You can start with what Liam Cohen had in place and but when people adjust to you and make things difficult, what are your answers going to be? When the difficulties come, how do you adjust? How do you answer those? Whereas Dave Canales, Liam Cohen were so good at adjusting and answering and maneuvering and repositioning that it led to head coaching opportunities for them. And I think a lot of people when they get promotions into a successful situation, it's like, yeah, you can do well enough because it's already there. But when you do have to make a change, when action is required, what do you do then and how does it work out? So that'll be the ultimate answer for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about keeping, the continuity with the same passing game coordinator, Grizzard. Can they just keep churning out the same coaching tree of offensive minds? Because it worked for going to Cohen, and Grizzard's been part of the same thing. I mean, eventually that well dries up, and that's the challenge of having a defensive head coach. But we don't have to, we almost assume, well, the next guy can't be nearly as good as Liam Cohen, and that's not fair either. So I think there's a possibility here that, hey, they can just kind of keep this thing rolling. Not that Grizzard's going to get a head coaching job next year like these other two guys, but they got a lot of talent there, and you don't have to be a great coach to get good production out of the kind of talent they have on that offense for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I think when a coach gets hired, they get so much credit for what they did the year before. But like you're saying, they still have a pretty good roster in Tampa Bay. Pretty good offensive line as well. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland. For my co-host, Lauren Cox, as we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.